as we sit back down, there'll be, of course, debate questions throughout. And what we're mainly concentrating on is three areas, philosophies, both personal and professional, candidates. We'll ask various questions for that, foreign policy and constitutional issues. We will ask questions occasionally about others, but those are our three main topics. We'll be bouncing through those and kind of make varieties of those as we go. So in other words, one topic one time, another question from a difference, and so forth. So that's where you'll hear things kind of go around a little bit. We're going to introduce today's candidates today. Ron, I'll let you go ahead and do our introductions. We're just going to introduce by name, just so everybody's familiar. We'll ask you to say hello real quick so people start to become familiar with your voice, since this is an audio broadcast, rather. And then we'll also be introducing names as we go when we ask you questions individually, just to make sure that everybody is familiar with who's getting busy.
Well, we have today very outstanding candidates. Clark Durant, and we all are very familiar with Mr. Durant. And we also have Gary Glenn. And as well, we have Rick. I'm sorry.
Randy Hekman.
Randy Hekman, of course. I just met him. And we also have Chuck Marino. Very sorry about that. And Scotty Boman, of course.
Trust me, mental freezes happen up here very easily.
It won't happen again.
Try being on Jeopardy sometime. It's a lot easier when you watch on television. That's what we all know. So let's go ahead and get started. And the first question, what we'll do is we'll be naming questions, and we'll start off in order closest to us, and we'll just be rotating throughout so everybody gets a chance to be first, everybody gets a chance to be last, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and start just for ease sake. We'll start with Scotty Bowman, and then we'll roll on down, and then pop across. Opening statements, rather, forgive me. See what you did, Ron? You got me up good now. Opening statements basically just explain those. Are 3 minutes in fact as we get started. There'll be a closing statement in a time period of about 2 minutes. And then there'll be various times for each question. Some will have more time than others. We'll let the candidates know how much time they have to respond for each one.
See, the problem is we didn't have our opening prayer. That's what I have my brain.
You know, we did not. Let's go ahead and do that.
All right. We just thank you, dear Lord, for this day. This is the day that you have made, and we are certainly glad in this. And we ask you to bless this event. And we ask for truth to prevail and your wisdom. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Can't ask for any better than that. Thank you, Lord. Let's go ahead and start with the opening statements. Now, we'll go in the same order as mentioned. Scotty Bowman, your opening statements, 3 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Michigan for a Conservative Senate and the various Tea Party groups that have had me as their guest, and the Central Michigan University Conservatives for hosting this event. As the year 2012 drew its first breath, our republic died in her sleep. President Obama signed the National Defense Appropriations Act, which contains a provision that imposes de facto martial law on this country. Now, at the president's whim, the guns of the greatest military of the world can be turned on us. We can be taken from our own homes and kept prisoners indefinitely, without the due process that is promised to us in our now dormant Constitution. This offense went almost completely unreported by the domestic press, while receiving some attention from the international media. Even more troubling is the near unanimous support this bill had in the Senate. The offending amendments were introduced by Michigan's own Senator Carl Levin and the most recent Republican nominee for president in the Republican Party, John McCain. Senator Debbie Stabenow was also a co-conspirator. We will be debating a number of issues today, but I hope there is one matter that we can all agree on. If we can all agree to make the repeal of these detainee provisions a priority, then we can rest assured that the Republican nominee will be a better choice than Debbie Stabenow. If the nominee allows this abomination to stand, then it makes no difference if Michigan's next senator is a Republican. The challenge we face is great, and it is essential that the people who put liberty first unite against our common enemy. not just politicians, not just a tyrannical government, but a pervasive movement fueled by the covetous greed for the other people's wealth and a culture of depraved indifference to our God-given individual rights. Now more than ever, the diaspora of free souls must unite against the cult of the omnipotent state. That is why I've repeatedly insisted that conservatives and liberals find common ground where they both seek greater liberty and discard any temptations they may have for more government control of individuals. From the ashes of our republic, let us build a culture of liberty and resurrect the land of the free. Find out more about me at boman12.org, B-O-M-A-N 12.org.
Thank you, Scotty Boman. Next opening statement comes from Clark Durant. Clark Durant, 3 minutes.
Thank you. I made the decision with my wife, Susan, to turn down the mic and to run for the United States Senate, but for really a very simple reason. Like you, I love my country, and our country is in jeopardy. Our country is on the wrong track, and that must change. For 40 years, I have spent my life only doing 3 things. Expanding the message of freedom around the world. I am the founder of Imprimis, the publication from Hillsdale College, and the director of their Center for Constructive Alternatives. But also trying to find solutions, even in the most difficult of times, serving under the most popular president in all of our lifetimes, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan asked me to do 2 tough jobs. One required Senate confirmation, and you know how important the role was because the left, my predecessor, was a woman named Hillary Rodham. And President Reagan asked me to head up the same agency and to challenge the spending culture in Washington and the monopoly of the legal profession that was denying access to justice to the poor. But also under his administration to take a government asset and privatize it and make it a taxpayer and not a tax user. But at the end of the day, I am running to be your voice, I hope, in the United States Senate to restore constitutional liberty so that we will have the free and prosperous country that our founders first intended, not when they brought the Constitution to life, but when they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors, that we could be free under a very powerful idea, that every person sitting here, every man and woman, is endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That happiness, that life, and that prosperity will not die if we all together work to restore a constitutional republic for our country. God bless you all, and thank you for being here today, too.
Thank you, Clark Durant. Gary Glenn has the next opening statement. Gary Glenn, 3 minutes.
Thank you. As a Christian, I say this with the full measure of my words and not frivolously. Thank God for the Tea Party movement. In the last 3 years, we have held politicians of both parties accountable and put back on the table for discussion among ordinary Americans our constitutional principles. And I also want to thank you, the Michigan for a Conservative Senate, for following a course you felt in your hearts was right for the best interests of this state, despite the criticism that you've received for simply making a choice about how you'll exercise your civil liberties and responsibilities as a citizen of this country. You know, I was in Washington about 2 months ago, and I had a very sobering thought descend on me as I was getting ready to leave. If I win this election, I have to go there. And actually winning would be the most disruptive thing to my family. So why would I risk winning and all the time and effort that's involved in trying to win that election in the first place? I was raised by a World War II Marine. And this particular Marine survived the attack on Pearl Harbor. I stood with him in the street in the same spot that he remembered standing shooting at Japanese airplanes. And I took his picture at the USS Arizona Memorial at the official remembrance ceremony with the commander of all Marines in the Pacific. And my dad was wearing a purple lei that identified him as a survivor. And what that meant was that all day the generals and admirals and captains and lieutenants saluted him, former Staff Sergeant James R. Glenn. Later that day at the Punch Bowl National Cemetery of the Pacific, I found his best friend's grave, which had his birthday and his death day. And that young man died defending our country when he was exactly 17 and a half years old. I tell you that story because it was my father, not just by his words, but by the example of his life, that taught me to love my country. And I think all the things that my dad taught me to love about my country, that your parents taught you, our liberty, our free enterprise economy, our strength and security, our founding Judeo-Christian principles are at risk of being lost from within in a way we as Americans could never have conceived possible. If Barack Obama and Debbie Stabenow are re-elected and given the chance to finish the job of implementing their agenda, they threaten to take away my children's birthright of freedom and turn our country into the United Socialist States of America. And we and our children may never get a free country back. I feel a sense of duty to do whatever I can to stop them. I know you do too. Thank you for being here. I volunteered to serve my country once before. I volunteer again today. And I deeply appreciate your consideration. God bless you.
Thank you, Gary Glenn. Randy Hekman, 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to Cindy for the team that's done so much work against some opposition to pull this off. I'm sad that there's two Peters who are not here today. But they made their choice. I respect that, but it's unfortunate that they're not here to join this because I really support the work that you folks have done. I think it's very legitimate. But let's ask the question, why are we here? You say, well, we're here to vet senatorial candidates. Yeah, you're doing that, but it's deeper than that. The reason why we are all here, let me throw out a number to you. 1,343,812. You say, what is that all about? That is the number, best we can determine, to the person, to the man and woman who from the Revolutionary War to present gave up their lives that we could be here and do this today. And yet we're within a handful of years of throwing all this away that we've been given. And that's why I'm here, and I believe that's why you're here today. So the question is, how can we reverse this juggernaut? We're not just tiptoeing to the cliff. We are going headlong to the cliff. We're going to run all over it. How can we reverse it? Is it enough simply to be right on the issues? And I can almost guarantee that all of us are going to be within percentage points on the same perspective on all the issues that we're going to be talking about this afternoon. Some of us perhaps a little bit more articulate than others. I'll give first place to my brother right here, Mr. Glenn, as far as being able to articulate some of these positions. But trust me, we all have an ability to vote in a very appropriate way should we be in the Senate. But what's actually needed is leadership. Leadership. And I would suggest to you that it's been the story of my life. I was a Navy officer in the Pentagon. I was a prosecutor. I was a judge. Many of you know my experience in court. I was the youngest judge in the state of Michigan. And during that time, I had a lot of cases, but I wrote a book on constitutional law. I believe I'm the only one up here that's written a book on the Constitution, a conservative perspective. I was executive director, started Michigan Family Forum, grew it from nothing to 13 employees. I was executive director of Michigan Family Forum and then executive director of Children's Bible Hour that grew that, doubled that in size. Then I was an executive pastor of a church that was struggling and that grew. To top it all off, my wife Marcia and I are parents of 12 kids. We've been married 42 years. Again, I don't take credit for this. This is just how God's wired me. I'm not wired as a particular debater, but I'm wired as I like to lead and I like to bring people together. I like to get change. And we need that change in this country drastically, or we, as we say, are going to be going over the cliff. So we need to send certainly someone to the Senate to bring leadership, but we also need to be able to speak from a bully pulpit to our country. I wish we had a president today who would bring our people together. Instead, he's campaigning and dividing, and he's hurting our country. So this is, I suggest to you that this is worth, what we're talking about is worth dying for, as many have done, but it's certainly worth living for. And that's what we're doing, that's what you're doing, and for fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy Hekman. And finally, today's participants, Chuck Marino, 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Many of you know that we sponsor a charity on our website, chuckmarino.com. Every month is a different charity. We're sponsoring Pregnancy Hotline. Please go there whether you vote for me or not to sponsor that charity. What a great campus Central Michigan is. Thank you for inviting us. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my conservative values and my international business experience to help redirect this country away from socialism. Although I hate to start with a quote from a socialist, it might give us an idea of where we're going. Norman Thomas said that the American people will never accept socialism unless it's repackaged into liberalism and you take small chunks out of it. Well, let's see how our liberal friends are doing. 50% of all of our workforce today, about 50% of our workforce, gets their income from our government. Almost 30% of our business in the United States is owned by the government, subsidized by the government, or has a government influence. President Obama and Debbie Stabenow picks winners and losers. Most of the time they're losers. President Obama and Debbie Stabenow took the biggest grab of one of the industries in our country, which was the insurance company, all in the name of socialism. The facts are overwhelming. Government has never before injected itself in all your walks of life. They made the biggest grab in the history of mankind, in fact. Ronald Reagan asked us all to be vigilant. He asked us all to work hard for freedom. He said someday we'll be sitting on our front porch and explain to our grandkids how freedom was. Well, I think that day's at hand right now. I think our freedom is gone. This administration and Debbie Stabenow wants the UN to be the governing factor over the United States by things like Agenda 21 and the Internet police. I implore all patriots in the sound of my voice to respond to that claim and all the other claims as no way. This president is the greatest deceiver I've ever seen. He says he's for smaller government, when the reality is all he's going to do is combine departments and grow a bigger government, and that government will be based on his TARP programs, too big to lose. But I'm not willing to believe that all our hopes and dreams are a distant memory. The president wants us to sacrifice and tell our children that their standard of living has to be less. I'm not willing to accept that. This week, the court got it right. The court decided in an unanimous ruling that the government cannot interject themselves into religion.
And that is time.
Thank you.